Welcome to the Birds and Nerds podcast. In each episode, we explore a random topic that I want to learn more about with an expert in the field. And somehow we always find the connection, sometimes unexpected, to my favorite animals, birds. In this episode, we're talking about privacy around at-home genetic testing, piecing together your family tree, and what to do when you have DNA results you weren't prepared for. And while most birds are monogamous and faithful, that's not always the case. It's a lot more complicated, just like with human beings. My nerd today is my very good friend, Bill Griffeth, retired CNBC anchor and author of 2 books on his own family history. We're talking a lot of secrets and surprises. I'm Ramona Schindelheim. This is Birds and Nerds. Bill, I am so happy you're doing the podcast Birds and Nerds with me. One of my dearest friends, you know how much I love talking to you anyway, so we get to do it now.
We do. And what I love is we've reversed roles here. I'm used to asking all the questions, and now I'm answering questions. But this is like you and me talking on the phone anyway, which we've done.
Exactly. And so everybody else is just going to have to live with it. That's my feeling. And I'm going to get to the birds in a few minutes, but part of the reason I've done these podcasts is that I'm always curious about things, just like you. We're curious people, right?
Yeah.
And so much has happened around genealogy and tracking your ancestors because of those stupid DNA tests. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a bad way to put it, but stupid DNA tests. So I wanted to start out like talking about, you started researching your family tree a long time ago.
Yeah.
And your first go around with it and your book, By Faith Alone, you made some discoveries about your family. I want to hear a little bit about that, and then we'll get into part 2 of your journey.
So 2003, summer of 2003, a first cousin of mine emailed me. Her daughter married into the Mormon church. And, the Mormons are very, very much into genealogy and researching family history for various reasons. And her daughter had done what's called her mission work, which is researching family history. And they had heard that I had some genealogical information and would I be willing to share it? So I did. It was very minimal. I sent it to them, and then they sent me back a few months later a huge compilation of our family history, which I found fascinating. But it was when I printed it out. It was like 49 single-spaced pages. And when I got to the page that said that one of our ancestors was one of the Salem witches, one of the women who in 1692 was executed for being a witch, I was hooked big time. Wow, right? I mean, this is history, but now it's personal. So I just went through the rest of her family tree, and going beyond names and dates and locations, I sort of, I'd like to say I put meat on the bones. I learned about these people as people. I get to know them as human beings as they were. And I took it from there. So I wrote this book by Faith Alone, because it was, what I learned was that a lot of the motivation of these people was their religious faith. They came from England or from the Netherlands to the American colonies. And why? Because of their faith. They didn't want to be persecuted. They had disagreements about faith and so forth. So we had Quakers, we had Puritans, we members of the colony that were the Pilgrims,
and Mormons, right?
And then Mormons, later. So it was a world cacophony of religions, and Methodists, by the way, which is what I am. But I'm a 5th generation Methodist, and I found out who the first Methodist was in the family. So yes, that was my introduction to genealogy, and it was very satisfying, up to a point.
Yeah. And how did you find, though, before we move on to that point, how did you find out about the religion, and how did you find, was it church records? Because obviously people are gone. So how did you find out?
Some of the the best records you can find are either from way back, are either cemetery records or church records. The churches keep a record of baptisms and marriages and funerals and so forth. And luckily, a lot of those A still exist and B have been digitized. So I was able to find records in old churches in England, for example, which then told me about the marriages of my seventh and eighth time great grandparents. And then, interestingly, two different wings of my family came from the very same town on the east coast of England. Uh, uh, and they went to the same church, and they were married at different times. So it was, it was these kinds of little discoveries that just kept me going. I was fascinated by it all, and I realized that they were religious people, very much so.
Well, I read something when I was rereading your second book, and I think it is the essence of the book, which is, you said that you tell people genealogy is the pursuit of truth. If you choose to, I'm quoting you here, choose to begin researching your family history, you'd better be prepared to accept whatever truths you uncover.
Amen.
Amen. And you uncovered another truth along the way with another cousin.
I have another cousin. Actually, it's the brother of the first cousin that reached out to me years ago. And he and I have been very close for many years, and we've pursued genealogy together. We've done some what I call ancestor hunts. We went to Kansas and Iowa, where some of our ancestors live. But he was more into the scientific part. He was into DNA testing. He was looking for living relatives, people who were still around that we didn't know existed. I'm more interested in the dead relatives, finding those who came before us many, many years ago. At any rate, he got into DNA testing. And he kept bugging me. You should take a DNA test so I can, learn some things about the differences in our DNA. I don't know. I still don't completely understand what he was after. But at any rate, finally, in the summer of 2012, one of the DNA testing labs was having a summer sale. And he emailed me and said, here's your chance. It's cheap now. So I took the test. Okay. I said, but this is your thing. You handle it. It's all yours. Go for it. So I, did the swab thing and I mailed it in. And in September, a month later, he emailed me and said, well, it got a weird response, a weird result. So I asked them to retest it. I said, okay, whatever. I said this. I said, well, we know how it's going to turn out. So, what's the big deal? Go ahead and retest whatever. October 4th. It was a Thursday, 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm sitting in the CNBC newsroom at my desk having lunch. It was turkey on whole wheat. I remember all these things about that very moment when he emailed me on that afternoon saying the final results came in and they confirmed that your father was not your father. He put it, Uncle Charles was not your father. The father who raised me was named Charles. So he said, Uncle Charles was not your father. Let me tell you, the whole head exploding thing, it was life-changing. It was eye-opening. It was life-altering. My whole life is now divided from the time before I knew, the time after I knew. It was unbelievable.
So that put you on another quest, I would imagine.
Very much so.
So you find out that the man who is your dad, the man who raised you, is not your biological father.
Correct.
And I know a lot about your mom, a religious woman.
Very much so.
Very much so. It must have had you thinking, one, oh my gosh, did dad know? And then number two, Mom, what?
So I should point out, by this time, this was in 2012. My father, the father who raised me, had been gone since he died in 1988. So he'd been gone a long time. Mom was 94 years old at the time. She was going to turn 95 the following January of 2013. And I didn't reach out to her to begin with. First of all, my first response was, and this is very common now, now that I've gone through this with other people through the years. I've worked with a lot of people now who've gone through this very experience. The first response typically is denial. Well, there must be a mistake. They had a mix-up in the lab or whatever. So I took a test with another lab, and then I called my brother. We had three sisters and my brother. All three of my sisters were gone by this time. So the only person I could call was my brother. And I told him about this. And of course, the first thing he did was laugh. You're going to tell me that mom fooled around? Give me a break. So I had him take a DNA test so we could see what was going on here. His came back right away, and he matched our cousin. He didn't match me. My test finally came through in December of 2012, and I didn't match either one of them. I should say this. Didn't match them as he was not my full-blooded brother. He was my half-brother. We shared one parent, not two parents.
Yeah.
So that confirmed it. My father was not my father, and he was a half-brother. And I have no full sibling. And it was, again, so it wasn't until January. We flew out to California for my mom's birthday. And it was on her birthday that I told her about my DNA. Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah. And happy birthday, Mom. And shocker that the secret was kept that long.
Yes. I was 56 years old at that point. And I'm convinced that she thought, well, why wouldn't she think otherwise? There was no DNA testing for a long time. How was anybody going to know? I was convinced that she thought she could slip out the back door eventually and without anybody ever knowing, but that didn't happen. She confessed right away. What she said was, I made a mistake when I was younger. And I like to say, I'm that mistake.
It shakes your whole world.
Absolutely it does. And I should point out, it was not long after. I didn't tell very many people. I told closest friends, and one of the closest friends I told after taking this DNA test was you.
I know.
I talked on the phone, and I confessed to you that I had learned that my father was not my father.
When you told me that, my life flashed your life flashed before my eyes. I was stunned because I know your mom, who she was, because she has passed as well. But yes. I knew who she was, and I also knew how important this, family history was to you. So fast forward, you told me, I was one of the first ones you told, I had a similar experience, and I have never spoken publicly about it, but you were the first person I called and told after my husband and daughter. A member of my family was doing the DNA research. They were doing the ancestors. They did the whole family tree. I have a copy, and you're right. You find it in Bibles. You find it in, I have a Bible from one of my grandparents, my dad's grandparents. But one of my kin, I'm keeping some of it private because of it definitely has caused a rift in our family. But somebody took a DNA test, and it turned out that they were not related to my dad's side of the family. They convinced me to do it, and I did it, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this was a fluke. Nope, came back. The man who raised me was not my biological father.
It is one of the ironies of all ironies. The fact that I told you, and I thought my story was unique.
Yeah.
I was alone in all of this. And then you took this test and found out exactly the same thing. I was, gobsmacked, as they say.
Same, because, and the first thing in my brain was, my husband was with me when I found out, and we called my daughter because she knew what was going on. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I got to call Bill. And, and I called you just fairly soon after. I'll tell you, I've talked this over with family members, and now I found out it's been 6 years, 7 years around that. And I don't remember the date, which is funny. I remember where I was standing. I remember that feeling, but I don't remember the date. And the thing that just shocks me is, I was, 60 when I found out. So like you, both my parents were gone. And I had no one to ask. There was my dad, who to me is still my dad, as I think we have discussed, he's the man who raised me, the man who loved me. People say to me when they find out that my mom had a relationship with someone else, and I am the result of it. And I also have 2 older siblings and 3 younger siblings. So I'm in the middle, and they say, did your dad know? And I said, I don't know. I have no clue. There's nobody to ask. He had no siblings. My mom's 2 brothers had already passed. She had a sister who was, she was in her late 80s, early 90s and showing signs of dementia. So I couldn't even ask her.
Right.
And there was like nobody to ask. So I am still in this same kind of, static mode where it's like, I don't know. But I did my own research. I will just share. I did my own investigative research and looked at DNA results, etc. I'm 99% certain I have figured out who it is based on the DNA results, census reports. I did all kinds of research. They worked in the same place. And my dad made a passing mention once when he was ill and I was at the hospital with him that he saw my mom with somebody else. Exact place where these 2 people work together, and the job titles match. And it's, to this day, though, it's like, I don't even know. It does change your life. You said it really well. Divides.
Yes. I mean, I'm very, very lucky that my mother was still alive, because as reluctant as she was to talk about all of this, at least she gave us a bare minimum amount of information. She gave us his name. And I'm trying to think of what else she gave us. It wasn't much. My mother had a wonderful memory. She could recite to you names and dates of people from the past. She could tell you the address of every home that she and my dad ever lived in. And they lived in a bunch of homes over the years. I mean, she gave us the exact address. So when I said to her, so where was this guy from? I don't know. Did he have a family? I'm not sure. I mean, I think she was stonewalling to a great degree, and it's understandable. I mean, we're talking about the 1950s when this happened. People didn't talk about that stuff. It was
Absolutely
incredibly shameful. It was incredibly embarrassing. And, to be discovered all that many years later, I can understand why she was reluctant. However, God bless my wife. You know Cindy very well. I was in the fetal position for a long time after this. She jumped on the genealogy wagon. She's a much better researcher than I am, by the way. And she found out a lot of information about this man. And, it opened a new wing to my family tree. I'm over it now. I like to say, you go through the I don't know if you did all this, but you go through the stages of
denial, grief and
anger, depression. I went through all that, but the last stage is acceptance.
Yeah.
I like to say I have accepted it. But as another friend who has been through this as well, you never you get past it, but you never get over it.
Yeah.
You're a different person afterwards, and I'm a different person afterwards, knowing
I,
all this. And it still
I
hits me
agree.
once in a while. Maybe it does you, but there's
Yeah.
still a moment when all of a sudden it hits me again, and I think you've got to be kidding me.
I grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up outside of Chicago. My parents from the South, they moved north, in search of economic mobility, the whole thing. I grew up very lower middle class family, but I thought we were really tight knit. I had a different kind of almost like a sitcom, 50s sitcom view of what my family was like. Certainly put it into a different perspective. Um, one of my relatives likes to say, "Huh, living a lie all those years," And I have accepted it though because life is complicated, people
Yes,
are
yes,
complicated,
yes.
and as much as you think you know someone, you may not, but that doesn't mean they don't love you and that you don't love them. And I found humor is the best way to deal with it 90% of the time. Um, so in our family, my immediate family, my husband Michael, my daughter Katie, and I, if we're watching something on TV and it's about a discovery like this, one of us will turn to the other and go, "Too soon?" It's the only way we can deal with it,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
does just change your whole perspective on things.
The good thing though is we're not alone. What
Yeah,
I've discovered, I'm a member of two different Facebook groups, private Facebook groups, for people just like us. We call ourselves NPEs, not the parent expected.
yeah.
Okay, one group has more than 10,000 members of people just like us who took a DNA test and found out that their father was not their father. A few, although they don't belong to our particular group, found out when they took the DNA test that they were adopted, which is a whole different,
Oh yeah,
dynamic. But to learn that one of
yeah,
your parents strayed, or specifically your mother strayed,
yeah.
for you to be born, so that your father's not your father, that that's that to me is there's a comfort to that, knowing I'm not alone. But there's also, as my daughter likes to say, so much for the greatest generation. Um,
Hey, there you
which I
go.
find very funny, yes.
Yes, me too.
But we got through it, and
Yeah.
what a journey it has been, eh?
Hey, it has been a journey, and I, I actually interesting that I was thinking about this, and then you brought it up in a conversation we had previously. The idea of privacy around this.
Yes, yes,
It, so my DNA is out there, and I can choose to use a fake name or just an identifier, but it shows who you're connected to. So do you do you think this that what do you think about the idea of the privacy? What if somebody wants to keep private, but they've got these testing sites and it's like all over it?
uh, I'm I don't think I'm naive. I don't think I'm a Pollyanna, but I'm not worried about it. You should understand, when you take a DNA test, you can choose how much privacy you have in terms of where, how much other people can see. You can choose a different name. You can choose just to be private. Your name doesn't have to be attached to your DNA and made public for other people to see. You can choose to do that or not. So that part doesn't bother me. The thing that people have had problems with, and these mail-in DNA tests are not as popular as they were a few years ago. These companies are suffering. Ancestry.com is really suffering. There's another one in Houston, that Family Tree DNA. They are the original company that would do these DNA tests for you. They're really suffering for business. Um, and people worry about the privacy issue. They've found serial killers using DNA matching and finding a distant relative, and then being able to narrow it down to find this person. Um, the research that is done to develop immunotherapy for cancer treatments and so forth, some of that comes from the DNA samples that we all have sent in and been allowed to be used for medical research. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm happy that it can be used for a positive thing like developing treatments for diseases, dreaded diseases. And as far as the legal part, I got nothing to hide. If they want to, use my DNA, and it, I don't know. I'm not worried about that. But plenty of people are, and civil rights groups are, mindful of all of this, and I think it has had a chilling effect on the people who would otherwise have decided to take a DNA test for whatever reason, to learn more about their family history or for whatever reason. But it has definitely slowed down.
I wonder what happens. You said some of these companies are in trouble. They're,
Yes.
hurting for business. Was it 23andMe?
Plant 3 and Me, yes.
Yeah. And what happens to those tests and the results that are there? Who gets them?
23andMe was founded by Ann Wojcicki, who is now the ex-wife of one of the founders of Google, one of the Google boys, as we called them. And she left the company, and here again, the business dried up, and they declared bankruptcy. So the question was, what happens to this research? And right away, I knew people who were, you could email the company and request that your DNA results, your DNA be destroyed, taken out of their research labs. I didn't do that. I don't know. I didn't, what was I worried about? At any rate, Ann Wojcicki came back, and she has purchased all of that DNA research, the DNA samples. It remains to be seen what she's going to do with it. But I'm not worried. Again, if they use it for research, and if she tries to revive the company and they do DNA testing again for people to find out what health issues they might have in the future, so be it.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
Do you think? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I want to get to that a point that I made to you before this, that I am convinced that we will all be required to take a DNA test in the future. It will be mandatory. Why? For insurance purposes, whether it's health insurance or life insurance. Right now, insurance companies determine what premium they're going to charge you based on a little bit of sampling. The cursory questions they ask about your health history and what your family history was all about, and so forth. But the rest of it is assumption, but now science is able to map out your entire human genome. They will have an entire picture of who you are individually as a human being, and which diseases are likely to be in your future based on the markers that they find in your human genome. Now, years ago, it was prohibitively expensive to map out an individual's human genome, tens of thousands of dollars. I just did the research recently because I knew we were going to talk about this. Guess what? The price to map out an entire human genome is now down to $600. And in the not too distant future, the feeling is it's going to be about $100.
Wow.
Tells me, and I've heard nothing otherwise, but my belief is that insurance companies are going to say, aha, for us to have a more accurate picture of who our potential customer is, they're going to have their whole genome mapped out so that we have a clear picture of the risks that we're taking by insuring this person. So mark my words. Here it is on Birds and Nerds right here. You heard it first, folks. I think it's going to be required someday that we will have to take DNA tests.
This is Birds and Nerds. So now I got a little bit of fact for you. You told me this. I found this really fascinating. You spent a lot of time on the Outer Banks. You sent me the most gorgeous photos of sanderlings.
Yes.
And so I I did a little research on sanderlings, and
Okay.
here, this is what they call a segue, right? Into this.
This is that heck of a segue, a major left turn we're making
Here
here.
we go. Maybe not.
Oh,
Sanderlings. This I turned to my friends at the National Audubon Society for a little bit of background on sanderlings and facts.
okay.
Sanderlings are usually monogamous,
Oh,
but in some cases, the female breeds with multiple males in a row within a single breeding season.
goodness.
Who knew? Who knew?
Imagine the impact on the children. All those little chicks, those little baby sanderlings. Who's my daddy?
Yeah, that's exactly. You see them in the Outer Banks. I also learned that they fly 6,000 miles and they breed in the Arctic. And
Really?
you see them in autumn and winter mostly in the Outer Banks. And I know you spend your time there like late summer.
Yes.
And 6,000 miles.
Wow.
And yes, they breed in the tundra of the Arctic. And there they sometimes have two nests and two daddies. And they, but here's really interesting. The male tends to the nest.
Really?
Yeah.
They stay at home dad.
Stay at home dads. Yep. So I found that very fascinating. We were talking, you told me that's your favorite bird, but also I wanted to know, I forced people to tell me, what do you like about birds? What is it that you like?
I think birds have life figured out and humans don't. I love they know their purpose in life. They pursue that purpose and there's no frivolity otherwise. They get up in the morning, they're hungry and they go find food. They mate, they build their nests. If it's time to build the nests in the year, that time of season, they are out looking for ingredients for that nest. They diligently work to build that nest. They mate. At a lock, apparently in the sanderling world, they lay their eggs, they have their children, and in the meantime they're out looking for food. Now, what I love when we go to the Outer Banks, we've been going since 1993. We go every summer, and I find myself sitting on the beach watching these birds. The sanderlings are the ones that run on the beach, and when the waves come in, they'll go down a little further. The sanderlings do to the water, and then when the wave comes in, they run away, and the wave never catches them, which I find hilarious. I love watching these little.
It's like kids playing.
Exactly, that's what they do. So I love taking pictures of them as they're running from the wave on the beach and so forth. I also love, by the way, this is not a sanderling thing, watching them fly in formation. Like they're the Air Force, the Blue Angels or something. How do they do that? Who decides that you're going to be the first one at the point, and who's the one that goes at the end there? Is there arguments about that? Do they have competitions? How do they decide? But anyway, I just love birds for that reason.
I'm going to have on in a later podcast a mechanical engineer from Blue Origin. He studies flight, obviously, as a mechanical engineer for Blue Origin, also loves birds. He's 28 years old. I've known him since he was 17, a high school friend of my daughter's. And it turns out he is just, a bird watcher, bird lover. I saw him at my daughter does stand up. I saw him at one of the shows, and we're the two people going, oh, look, it's a dark-eyed junco, in the tree. And but when I was talking to Michael a little bit about it, his name is Michael, birds being able to fly, their bones are lightweight, their wings are shaped a certain way, and they angle down. And again, I turned to like the National Audubon Society to look up a few things too. And one of the things that I found really interesting was that idea of the formation. And
Yes.
some of the birds, when they migrate or they fly, they do it. And when you watch them, they don't hit each other.
Right.
There's some type of genetic predisposition that they they're able to do this, and that there's a lot of research around it still going on. Is, as to your point, how do they know who's the leader?
Right.
They do, if they go on the long migratory treks, they do switch leaders, which is really interesting. But how do you know? They can't answer. They can't ask them.
I have to believe that there has to be an Abbott or a Costello in the group at some point. When they turn, the group turns right and they go left. They leave the group, but they don't. You never see that. They remain. I envy it. I wish that flying to them is like second nature, and I would love to be able to do something like that.
I also researched that too. They have hollow bones with air pockets in it.
Hollow, really?
Yeah, there's hollow bones. It makes it easier for them to fly. We could never do it. Our bodies can never support our weight because of our
for a lot of reasons.
Yes, own hereditary.
Yeah.
But by the way, in the episode right before this, I talked to a guy about AI and like the ethical use of AI, and we got around to birds and AI, and he says AI is being used to kind of track those migratory patterns, and we get into this a little bit in that podcast, so people can go back and listen to it. And the other thing is his prediction is that they're using AI to capture the bird song, the bird calls, and won't it be great at the time when we could decipher it using AI and be able to ask birds questions? And maybe we can ask them, how do you know if you're supposed to be the leader or if you're supposed to be in the back?
See, here again, people worry about the advancements of science, DNA testing, and the impact it has on our lives and the privacy issues and so forth. And I get that. But the positive parts, I think, are so exciting. AI, so many people are worried about that, the job replacements and Armageddon, that they'll take over like they did in 2001, A Space Odyssey and so forth. But the positive aspects, the advancements in science, in sociology, other areas of life, I think is fascinating. I love the browser I use on my computer now has an AI bot, and I can ask it questions, and it gives me very thorough answers on things. And I find that's absolutely fascinating. So I'm not, again, there I am, Pollyanna, Mr. Naive maybe, but I'm not worried about a lot of that. Now, that's not to say that we won't have problems, but I think that the positives outweigh the negatives.
I agree with you on the science part. I'm all in on it, because if we can find a way to cure cancer or treat it better, or again, understand nature around us, that's great. And that's why we need people who are the guardians, who are looking at it and trying to make sure it's being used for good and not bad. So,
by the way,
yes,
a little aside here before we say goodbye. I'm sitting here in New Jersey, as you know. We just had another earthquake.
Oh.
Just sitting here, we just had an earthquake, right? Yes, we just had an earthquake.
Oh my goodness.
So it's nice to be back in California again. We had one last.
I haven't had one for a while.
We had one a few days ago. It was a pretty good one, and I just felt this one, and I can sense out there my wife is going nuts. So anyway.
Okay. Well, I will let you go and handle that. Bill, thank you. Thank you for this conversation.
A great pleasure. I love the concept. Birds and nerds, go for it. I hadn't thought much about birds except when we go to the Outer Banks until you brought this up. And I thought, I really do like birds, and I'm interested in them. Not nearly as much as you are, but what a great concept. Good luck with it.
Thanks, my friend.
Love you much.
Love you too. I'm Ramona Schindelheim. Thanks for listening to the Birds and Nerds podcast. For more episodes, go to birdsandnerdspodcast.com.